Peacock Feathers by Temple Bailey. Chapter 3. 1. My horse and I came at last to an open space which was clear of trees. As we approached it, my eye was caught by something which lay directly in our path. It was a woman's hat, a little alpine-peaked thing of soft green felt and stuck in the side, so that it slanted above the crown and caught the light in a gleam of iridescence. Was a peacock's feather. Cinderella's prince was no surer that the glass slipper belonged to the maiden he sought than was I that the hat with the shining feather belonged to Mimi Lebrun. I felt she must be near, yet, though my eyes swept the open space and the shady depths beyond, I could see no sign of her. I picked up the hat and had it in my hand when a man appeared suddenly at my right, rounding a great tamarack tree which had hidden him. He was on foot, was very tall, very dark, and wore riding clothes of irreproachable style and finish. He frowned when he saw me standing with the hat in my hand. "Give it to me," he said. "Miss Lebrun lost it." I did not like his manner, but I handed him the hat, saying, "I am Jerry Chandler, Lionel Clark's guest. The rest of the party have ridden on." He did not acknowledge my introduction of myself by giving me his own name. "We heard them go," he said, and his words confirmed my belief that Mimi was not far away. I felt, however, that the presence of the dark man struck a jarring note in my romantic symphony. I would go away at once and leave her to him, but he surprised me by handing the hat back to me. "You might as well take it to her," he said, "and I'll catch up with the rest." He had hardly finished his sentence when he strode down to where his horse was hitched, and presently I heard the pounding of departing hoofs. In a whirl of conflicting emotions, I dismounted and went toward the place where the man had emerged. At first I saw no one. Then suddenly I was aware of that bright banner flaming against the naked whiteness of a group of birches. I had to look twice, however, to discover that the bright banner was a woman's hair. Her riding clothes were on a rough grey cloth that melted into the background. She was leaning against one of the trees, and her back was towards me. She was taller than when I had seen her last, but her hair was tied with a black ribbon, just as it had been tied when as a child she had lunched with her grandfather in the Senate restaurant. A twig snapped under my feet, and without turning she said, "I told you not to come back, Andy." "It is not Andy." She flung herself around and looked at me, and it was then I saw she had been crying. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Jerry Chandler." "Lionel's friend?" "Yes. I found your hat, and the man who came out of the woods said you were here." "Andy Fuller." She hesitated, but confessed the truth. "We were having a peach of a quarrel. I told him to go away and not to come back." I just stood looking at her. It seemed to me incredible that I had met her at last, lovelier than in all my dreams of her, in spite of the tears which stained her cheeks. "I always cry when I'm angry," she says. "It is a silly thing to do, but Andy made me furious, and I told him what I thought of him. I think he was afraid to come back." "I am sure he must have been," I told her. "He looked it." She sat down on a log and took her hat from me. "So you are Jerry," she said. "Lion has told me a lot about you. How did you happen to come through here?" "Where's Lion?" He went on with the others, but this was all so wonderful that I wanted to be alone with it." She looked at me. "Yes," she said, "it is wonderful. You've never been here before?" I smiled down at her. "I've never been anywhere." I surprised her, I think, by my honest confession. I surprised indeed myself. How interesting to know that you have it all before you. Well, it is. I sat down on the other end of the log. I was afraid to breathe, lest I spoil the enchantment of the moment. It was almost impossible to believe that she was really there, so delicate, so fine. This isn't the first time I've seen you, I went on. You were in the Senate restaurant years ago with your grandfather, and my uncle and I were eating lunch near you. How did you know who I was? I asked my uncle, and he said you were Mimi Lebrun. Her dark irised eyes were shadowed. It was the last time I had grandfather all to myself. The next year he married Olga. She seemed to float away from me on a sea of memory. I brought her back. You had a peacock's feather in your hat then. Do you always wear them? Oh, yes, she stood up. We must be going, or we shall be late for dinner. She lifted her face to me. When I get back to the camp, will everybody know I have been crying? I had to admit they might. I'll wet my handkerchief in the pool and freshen up a bit. Let me wet mine. I brought it back to her, and she had me hold a little mirror, which she fished out of her pocket. She had, too, an infinitesimal powder puff, and she touched her cheeks with it, and her nose and chin. Her own skin was rose-leaf, and she did not need any artificial aids. Yet I must confess that the faint perfume of the powder, and her face so close to mine as I held the mirror, set my pulses pounding. She put on her hat, and we went together to where her horse was tied to a tree. What did you think, she asked, as we rode along, when you found my hat? I wondered how it came there. I thought there might have been an accident. There wasn't, she said dryly. I threw it at Andy. She made no further explanation, and there was silence for several moments, while I was consumed with curiosity as to what the dark man could have done that she should throw her hat at him. She spoke again after a while of her grandfather. Did you hear any of his speeches? Yes. Wasn't he wonderful? Yes. I used to hang over the gallery rail to listen. I must have been there sometimes when you were hanging over the gallery rail. How queer to think that we were both there. Lionel has told you about Olga. It was dreadful for all of us. She's pretty, isn't she? And old men are vain. She flattered him. The note of sophistication in all that she said hurt me. Perhaps he really loved her. There was a flash of jealousy. But he loved us. He loved me, yet he forgot us at the last. I am sure he did not forget you, I said honestly. He couldn't have forgotten. But there was the will, sharply, leaving her everything and leaving us out. Her breath was coming quickly. It wasn't just the money, although that meant a great deal to us. It was the forgetfulness that hurt. Yet I think that my defense of her grandfather pleased her and formed a link between us, and that she was kinder to me because of it. For she was not kind to everybody. I was to find that out as I knew her better. She could wrap herself in her little mantle of remoteness, and thus withdraw from those who disturbed her or whom she disliked. She had this manner to some extent with Olga. It was the one flaw I found in her, that she could accept favors and yet seem to scorn them. 2. When we reached the house, there was nobody about. Mimi left me, and I went to my room, where Lionel was getting into white flannels. We're all going over to the Bradleys for a dance, he told me, so you'll have to change. Where were you? He asked presently. When I looked around, you were out of sight. I rode through the woods. I met your cousin. Andy Fuller said you were with her. What happened to Andy? He was terribly grouchy. I think he and Miss Lebrun had quarreled. They are always quarrelling, and don't call her Miss Lebrun. Everything here is first names. It's a rule of the camp. When I came back from my bath, I asked, "Who is Andy Fuller?" "You wouldn't have to ask that if you lived in St. Louis. His father and his grandfather were at the head of a great coffee house. Money to burn. He wants to marry Mimi, and he'll get her before he is through with it." My heart seemed to stop beating. Is she in love with him? No, but the chances are she'll marry him. He isn't used to having people say no to him, and he's very masterful. A man like that usually gets what he wants in the end. Across the years came the echo of Uncle Jerry's voice. "If you want to win a woman, make yourself her master." It had come to me then as a rather attractive theory. It was hateful to me now. "She seems very young," I said. "Do you think of marrying?" "Well, she is. But even after her debut, she's not likely to find anyone with more money than Andy." I wanted to flare into a denunciation of his worldliness. I wanted to tell him that a girl like Mimi Lebrun, a little lovely thing like Mimi, would not give herself to any man until she found her mate, that she would not give herself to any man who failed to climb with her to the heights, that she was too young now to know what love really meant. But when she was taught, I had the sense, however, to hold my tongue. Lionel would laugh at my rhapsodies. He wouldn't understand, and he would find out how I felt about Mimi. I couldn't risk that. No one must find out. It was too sacred. When we were dressed, we went into the great living room where most of Olga's guests were assembled. I saw Andy Fuller towering above the other men. I was glad he did not tower above me. I could match his inches with my own, and I had more than his breadth of shoulder. I had, too, enough boyish vanity to believe that I could match him in looks. Lionel had slapped me on the shoulder as we left our rooms, saying, "You're stunning in those clothes, Jerry. Don't let anybody put things over on you." I knew what he meant. I had confessed to him a certain shyness I had felt in accepting Olga's invitation. "I'm not like your friends, Lion." "You don't have to be," he told me. "Just keep a stiff upper lip and don't let them see that you feel the difference." Yet I did feel the difference, nonetheless, and stood a little on the outside of the group of young people, seeing Bernice in the midst of them looking like a bit of flame in her amber satin gown as the light of the fire shone on her. Mimi was not there when I first came in, but presently I saw her approaching through the door of the living room, which led to what Lionel called the harem. Olga had given the men one wing of the house and the women the other. Her own suite separated the two. I was surprised that there were no older people to keep the ogre company. I was to learn the reason later. Mimi in the doorway was not the Mimi of the afternoon. She seemed to have grown up in a moment. She wore a trailing dress of a deep shimmering blue, and on a thin chain around her neck was a pendant, an old French jewel set with emeralds and sapphires and opals. She told me afterward that this pendant was the last thing her grandfather had given her. It was now her only ornament. Her burnished hair was dressed high on her head, and this too gave her a grown-up air. From the moment of her entrance, she was the center of things. I did not see her speak to Andy Fuller, but he stood beside her with an air of ownership which I resented furiously. I was, as it were, on the fringes of the crowd, but at last Mimi saw me and nodded. I did not join her. In her princess-like presence, I was gripped by self-consciousness. I felt that I must not presume on her friendliness of the afternoon. I wished desperately that someone would come and talk to me, so that Mimi would not see me standing there alone. It was Olga who took me finally under her wing. She approached me in her slow way, waving a great feather fan. She was very gorgeous in a spangled silver, and, I must admit, very beautiful. "You won't mind," she said, "if I put you next to me at dinner? The last arrival always gets the seat of honor, but I know you men would rather be between two pretty girls." "I wouldn't," I said honestly. I think she liked that, and we laughed together. "You don't know any of them very well, do you?" she asked. "No one but Lionel." "Well, it is always hard to get started in a crowd like this. I still feel that I am not acquainted. They have all been coming every year, but this is my first summer, and I invited this particular crowd because of Lionel and Mimi. I wanted them to have a good time. I might have asked some of my own friends, but they wouldn't fit in." She hesitated. "My friends are different." I knew what she meant. Her beauty would carry her far with men. It had carried her on to marriage with a distinguished gentleman, but it would not carry her far socially with women. Her money would be more potent there. I think that her real reason for inviting the young crowd was that she could get on with them better than with their elders, and she felt that friendship with them might be an entering wedge. Bernice was on the other side of me at dinner. Mimi was across the table, with Andy Fuller next to her. As the meal progressed, I saw them talking honestly. Bernice saw them too. "He's apologizing to Mimi," she said. "He's always doing it." "And does she forgive him?" Bernice shrugged her slender shoulders. It was a gesture I had noted among the girls of the crowd. It was indeed a subtle reminder of their French ancestry, that and the darkness of their eyes. But Mimi's beauty was quite gloriously Irish, by way of, I found, her maternal great-grandmother. Her cheeks at that moment were flaming, and under the lights her hair flamed. "Do you wonder that Andy is crazy about her?" Bernice was saying in my ear. I did not wonder that anybody was crazy about her. I wished that Bernice would not talk to me. I wanted just to sit and feast my eyes on Mimi. Then Lionel's voice broke in. "They're asking me to read our play, Jerry, and I read like a fish, so I've told them you'll do it." It seemed to me that a perfect battery of eyes were turned on me, but I managed to say, "We can't read the whole of it. It isn't finished." "I know, but we've got the outline, and the big third act is all written. We can try it on these helpless infants when we come home from the Bradleys. If they don't like it, they can go to bed." 3. There were 10 guests besides Lionel and me. With our hostess, we made 13 at the table. Bernice was much disturbed. "Something will happen to some of us, you'll see if it doesn't. And it will probably be Mimi. She can't miss it, with her peacock feathers and 13 at table. She laughs at me when I say such things, but look at the awful luck she's had with her grandfather dying and all that." She caught herself up as Olga turned a little towards us and changed the ending of her speech skillfully. "Well, thank heaven there won't be 13 us in the cars. Andy Fuller will drive 6 and Drake 4, and the rest will go in Scott Selden's car. I'm going with Scott. Far be it from me to ride behind Andy when he's got Mimi on the front seat." Remembering the episode of the afternoon, it seemed to me surprising that Mimi should ride with Andy, but she did, wrapped in a wonderful cloak with a fur collar which came up to her eyebrows. It was just as she was stepping into the car that she turned and saw me. "Aren't you going to ride with us?" she asked. "We've plenty of room for him, haven't we, Andy?" Andy nodded, and before I knew it, I was sitting on one of the small folding seats in Andy's 7-passenger car with 2 pretty girls, the Amidon twins in the tonneau, and a stocky little youth, Gerard Sylvester, on the other small seat. I was just behind Mimi, so near that my leaning forward a little in the dark could touch my cheek to the fur of her collar. I could hear her low laugh, the things she said to Andy. "I haven't forgiven you, Andy," floated back to me, "but I'd rather have you drive me than Drake or Scott Selden." "Thank you. Bernice says she wouldn't trust me when I've got you beside me." "I would trust you always, as a driver." I felt that I ought not listen, and I ought to talk to the Amidon twins. But they seemed absorbed in their little Sylvester chap, so once more Mimi's words floated back. "I do like you, Andy, and the things you do for me are wonderful, but I won't stand being bossed. I never have been. I never will be." "That's why I love you." Again, in desperation, I turned to the twins and spoke of the beauty of the moon. But they cared nothing about the moon. Sylvester had left his seat and was sitting between them, and they were apparently entranced by some story he was telling. They lent unwilling ears to my remarks, so I gave up in despair. Mimi was saying, "But when you do things as you did this afternoon, trying to make love to me when you know how I hate it." The world was all at once flooded with light. So this was why she had thrown her hat at him, why she had cried. "If you loved me," Andy expostulated. "But I don't. How many times must I tell you? Why can't we be just friends?" "Because I want more than that." His voice was tense. "And I'm going to have it, Mimi. You can't get away from me. You are mine." I was listening now with all my ears. I wanted to know what Mimi would say to this autocrat who claimed her. I played eavesdropper unashamed. For a long time she said nothing, and Andy drove as if 1,000 devils were pursuing. I began to realize what Bernice had meant, yet always, in spite of his wild speed, he seemed to have the car under control. Then Mimi said, "That isn't the way to make me care, to act like a truck and a tyrant." "Do you want to care, Mimi?" "Oh, well, perhaps. Everybody says it would be the ideal thing." I sat back in my seat, sick at heart. Oh, that hard little voice. It seemed to me it could not belong to the girl with whom I had talked in the afternoon, to the woman of whom I had dreamed. I sat back in my seat, sick at heart. Oh, that hard little voice. It seemed to me it could not belong to the girl with whom I had talked in the afternoon, to the woman of whom I had dreamed. 4. The Bradleys' house was more like a country club than a private residence. It was a part of a fashionable summer colony, and was furnished with a sumptuousness that seemed out of place in the heart of those wild mountains. Yet it was lovely, nonetheless, a sort of fairyland, and my heart quickened to the beat of the music. Lionel danced first with Olga, then turned her over to me. I'll confess that I felt sorry for her. She was ill at ease and showed it. I was ill at ease, but I did not show it. I was sure of that, for Lionel said afterward, "You might have been born to the purple, Cherry." But I was not born to the purple. I had been born in a parsonage, and the thing had left its marks upon me. I had not inherited, as those other young people had inherited, a tradition of gaiety. It was not until I danced with Mimi that all the stars sang. I knew then that I had never been young, and that I had never been happy, that never before had I drunk of the wine of life so that it was warm in my veins, making me mad with the joy of it. Then and there was born in me a fierce determination to win her. I did not know how I was going to do it. Without her, my life would be wasted. My ambitions would go down in a crash. I would wander on, aimless, in an empty world. I am sure that Mimi did not have the least idea of my state of mind. She treated me in a comradely fashion, as she had treated me in the wood. She gave me 3 dances before the evening was over, cutting out one of Andy Fuller's to do it, and I could see that he was seething. I did not go back in Andy's car. Olga asked me to ride with her. She thought, I am sure, that she was being kind to me, and that I felt as alien as she among those merrymakers. She could not know I was at last recklessly one of them, that the Puritan in me had succumbed to the pagan, that I meant to grasp at happiness at whatever sacrifice of previous scruples. I wanted to drink life from a brimming cup. I am afraid I was not very good company. My thoughts were with Mimi on that front seat with Andy Fuller, and I wondered what he was saying. When at last we reached the camp, it was after 2 o'clock. I had expected, of course, that we would go at once to bed, but I did not know the nocturnal habits of Olga's guests. "We can sleep in the morning," Lionel told me, "and they want the play, Jerry." I found that "they" meant specifically Catherine Merrill and Styles Sanderson. They represented, it seemed, the literary element in Lionel's list of acquaintances. Styles had written some verse which had been published in magazines of the better class. Catherine had tried to write, and, having failed to do anything significant, she had won a reputation for brilliancy by her ruthless criticism of the work of others. The Amidon twins and their Girard Sylvester decided not to sit up. They had made plans for an early morning fishing trip, and included in their plans were 2 house guests whom I have not mentioned, Jimmy Hancock and Luther Dean. They made no apologies for their desertion. Anne Amidon was dead for sleep and confessed it without shame. "Run along, baby," Lionel told her. "You are too young for such late hours. And anyhow, Jerry's play might go to your head." "It isn't my play," I objected. "All the love scenes are yours," he said. "You wouldn't let me touch them." Catherine Merrill looked at me. "You don't mean that you are as old-fashioned as that?" "As what?" "As to attempt the romantic." "I haven't attempted it. I have achieved it," I said lightly. She did not know whether or not I was in earnest, nor did the rest of them, and I felt I had scored a point by my daring. It was, as I have said, the day in which we worshipped at the shrines of Shaw and Pinero and Henry Arthur Jones. But Lionel and I had lowered no model. We had flown high, and perhaps too high. We had taken the story of a man who, seeing the hope of his country in a return to democracy, applies it to his own life and becomes, as his grandfather was before him, a cobbler. By day he mends shoes, and at night he lives among his books and studies the stars. There comes to his little shop a summer visitor, a girl who wants her slippers mended. She is the ward of a rich aunt and has been brought up in luxury and idleness. The cobbler falls in love with her, and the dramatic action is based on his fight to bring the girl to his own democratic point of view and to save her from a richer suitor. The whole thing was, as I have intimated, crude. The effort of 2 boys who knew nothing of the stage, but there was imagination in it, and now and then it struck 12. I had written the speech in the 3rd act where the cobbler made his plea with the girl for a simpler life, and I had written with a pen of fire. It needed, however, more than a fast-driven pen to make the situation plausible. It needed, indeed, genius. Yet the work was strong in some parts. I have the old play now. I wish I had the boy's fine fervour as he dashed off the lines. My audience grouped itself about the hearth in a half-circle. Mimi was in Olga's high-backed chair, with the bearskin as background for her beauty. Andy lay on the rug at her feet, thus enthroned among the shadows, for there were only the candles and the light of the fire. Mimi took on a mysterious aspect. She seemed less a girl, more of a goddess. Olga had chosen a deep chair a little removed from the others. I think she slept while I read. I am sure she was not in the least interested. Standing on the hearth rug, with a tall candle set on the mantel to light my manuscript, I began to read. Now and then, when a sentence was obscure, I lifted the candle. I was perfectly conscious of the picturesqueness of my pose. I was conscious, too, of my skill as a reader. I had inherited my father's gifts of a good voice and an impassioned manner. I felt that when Mimi heard that speech in the third act, she would see me with new eyes, and the others would see me. I knew the speech almost by heart, and when I came to it, I gave it with all the power and passion in me. I was aware that Styles Sanderson's grey eyes were shining behind his glasses, that Catherine Merrill was poised like a hawk ready to pounce. Andy Fowler did not look at me. He lay motionless on the rug at Mimi's feet. Bernice and Lionel sat side by side on an oak settle, and her hand was in his. And Mimi, still as a statue, her lips parted, leaned forward with intent face, listening. When I finished, there was applause, and Styles Sanderson said, "It is very well done." "How are you going to end it?" Bernice asked. "Oh, of course the cobbler will get the girl," Catherine Merrill said in her clear, high voice. "People must have a happy ending." And then Mimi flung out, "Oh, I don't want him to get her. It sounds all right in a play, but do you think a girl would be happy without any of the luxuries she loves? What could he give her that would make up for them?" And I flung back to her, "The question is, what could she give him? Love doesn't ask, it gives." Andy Fowler sat up. "I agree with Mimi. Your man is a cad, and he's asking everything." We faced each other, two tall young cockerels. "Real life isn't like that," Andy went on. "Even if she had married him, do you think she would have loved him when she had to wash his dishes and cook his food? The thing is preposterous." For the first time, hearing it set forth in his scornful voice, it seemed preposterous to me. "I told Jerry it wasn't real life," Lionel said, "but it seems to me pretty fine." Styles Sanderson agreed with him heartily. "It is fine. And what, after all, is real life?" "Oh, things that really happen, Styles," said Catherine. "You know that." "Things can happen to our souls as well as to our bodies," Styles said. "It seems to me that Chandler has stripped his man and woman of all that is tawdry. He has found the truth." They discussed it hotly after that, but I took no part in it. I was feeling a reaction from my high moment. The cobbler's plea had fallen in dull ears. Mimi had not been touched by it. She had ranged herself on the other side of the argument, and Andy was her advocate. They stood, as it were, together. Styles was insisting, "Chandler has done a big thing. You'll all see it some day. The world needs more poets. It is the dreams of poets which are, after all, the prophecies." I saw Mimi glance at me and look away again, and her voice came with an edge of weariness. "I wonder if the rest of you are as tired as I am." Olga's voice, heavy with sleep, said, "Do you know what time it is?" "I know I'm starved," Lionel said. "Well, there's everything in the refrigerator," Olga told him, "and I'll make some coffee." We adjourned to the kitchen, and I helped Olga to make the coffee. Mimi, with her train always in the way, cut bread for toast, Andy broiled the bacon, Bernice scrambled eggs, and the rest of the crowd set the table. It seemed all very fantastic to me. I was not hungry, and when they trooped into the dining room, I did not follow them. I went out of doors where the wind blew chill. Light was creeping through the forests, but so faint was it that the trees seemed spectral, unsubstantial. I walked under them. I did not know where I was going. I only knew that my mind was in a turmoil, that the events of the day had crowded in upon me until I was tense with conflicting emotions. Then, through the silence of the woods, a voice called, "Cherry?" I turned and saw Mimi coming towards me. Suddenly the ghostly forest seemed to enfold us. Only with an effort could I keep myself of holding out my arms to her, so confident did I feel that I had drawn her to me. "Cherry," she said breathlessly as she came up, "what made you run away from the others?" "What made you?" "I don't know." She was gazing at me in a half-dazed fashion. "I looked for you, and you went there, and I came to find you." "And now that you have found me, what?" "I want you to go back with me. It is freezing out here, and everybody is drinking coffee." She stopped, then went on hurriedly. "But I didn't come to say that. I loved your play, Cherry." She was close to me and laid her hand on my arm. I laid my own hand over it. "Yet you laughed at it." "No, but it was so true that I hated it. Love might be like that, Cherry, if there were any men in the world like your cobbler." I stood looking down at her. "There might be a man." "No. Oh, what do you know about men? You ought not to write of the kind who don't exist. You'll make women think that some day they may meet them, and the kind they meet are Andy Fowlers." She flung his name at me with scorn. I was surprised at her frankness. Yet I will say this, that then and ever after she was frank with me. "Why not let the Andy Fowlers go?" "Oh, Andy is the apple on the tree in this Garden of Eden. He's always tempting me. I adore the things he does for me, and I should miss them dreadfully if he didn't do them." "Would you miss him?" "I don't know, Cherry. I'm afraid I should." We stood there in the spectral forest, staring at each other. At last Mimi said, "Oh, let's go in. They'll be looking for us." They were looking for her, or at least Andy Fowler was. He came upon us suddenly, and when he saw her with her hand on my arm, anger leaped into his eyes, but his voice was unruffled. "I thought you were lost, Mimi." "No, I came out to tell Jerry that I liked his play." It was her defiance, flung in answer to that look in his eyes. Again the flame leaped up, but he still kept his voice to that unruffled note. "Well, why didn't you tell him in a warmer place? You'd better get back to the fire, and everybody's going to bed." "Oh, why go to bed," she demanded, "when the day is just beginning? I could stay out here forever." The dawn had come upon us, flooding the forest with rose light, and in the midst of that effulgence, Mimi, with her burnished hair and shimmering gown, seemed a figure of almost unearthly beauty. And now Andy turned to me. "I should think you might have known, Chandler," he said with a touch of insolence, "that it is too cold for her here." Before I could answer, Mimi interposed. "Cherry had nothing to do with it. I came because I wanted to come. I shall go in when I want to go." I expected to see the flame burst into a conflagration, but I was disappointed. Quite unexpectedly, Andy laughed. "I adore you when you are angry, Mimi, but I am not going to have you die on our hands with pneumonia. If you don't come in, I'll carry you." She protested, "Andy!" but I saw with a sinking heart that she was not offended, and there was the faint echo in my ears of Uncle Jerry's advice, "Make yourself her master." Mimi walked back to the house beside Andy, and I followed. The rose had faded from the sky, and the world was grey. 5. From that time on, Andy Fuller was my enemy. He had, of course, no definite cause for grievance, but he was conscious, I think, of some subtle influence which I came to exert over Mimi, and I, too, was conscious of it. It was marvelous that it should be so, but she was always kinder to me than to any of the others. She gave to me what seemed to me an adequate explanation. "I am always having to oppose my will to Andy. You are as restful as a calm after a storm." She liked to be with me, and we often walked and rode together. I told her something of my life in the parsonage, yet I am sure she never saw it as bare as it was in reality, nor ourselves so poor. My fancy painted it as it painted all things with a full brush. It was at this time that I began to build the gigantic structure of self-deception which was to work such havoc in my life. I saw Mimi's future and mine in a glamorous haze, in which we lived on Uncle Jerry's ranch, as in some ancient feudal castle. That Uncle Jerry must die before my dreams could come true did not weigh upon me. The ranch was, in effect, mine. I saw Mimi as the chatelaine, with a retinue of servants. I saw her at one end of a festive board, dispensing hospitality. I saw her in the saddle, riding with me across the saffron mesas and up the purple hills. I saw her in a high-backed chair like Olga's, with its black bear skin, listening while I read the plays which would make me famous. It was this dream which gave me confidence. I came to my love, not as a poor parson's son, but as the heir of Uncle Jerry. I might, I argued, be dealing in futures, and in very indefinite futures, but we were both young. We could wait. All the great lovers of history had been constant. All the great heroines, Eloise and Juliet and Francesca. Oh, the dreams of a boy, and of such a boy! I could weep as I remember him. Lionel and I worked in the mornings on our play, and I worked sometimes late into the night. I counted every moment lost that was not spent with Mimi or at my desk. The play came at last to be my play. Lionel neglected it more and more in his very active pursuit of Bernice, or perhaps it might be put in her pursuit of him. Anyhow, the wooing became fast and furious, and on the 10th day after my arrival the engagement was announced. Olga gave a party in honor of it. The Bradleys were invited, and the other people from the summer colony. It was a dinner party, with the rugs up afterwards in the living room for dancing. Andy Fuller ordered from Tiffany's a present for Bernice. It came one morning when we were having our midday breakfast. It was golden bottle for scent, set with pearls and hung on a gold chain. Bernice was in raptures, and Andy was the hero of the moment. And now, with Bernice's gift from Tiffany's, came a brooch for Mimi, a tiny jeweled peacock in a circle of diamonds. I do not know when he gave it to her, but she wore it for the first time the night of the dinner party, and for the first time I saw her in white, a sheer lace dancing frock, with Andy's pin the only spot of color. Everybody exclaimed over the pin. "Of course he shouldn't have done it," Mimi explained calmly, "but he says that it is an advance bridesmaid's present, that there is no reason why the bride should have everything." I am sure they all felt she was going to marry him, and that the pin was the sign and the seal of their understanding with each other, but my heart was like lead. Either way, the thing seemed unspeakable. If she married him, or if, with no expectation of marrying him, she would accept such a gift from him. It was when the evening was half over that I had a dance with her. All the windows were open wide, and the moonlight streaming in seemed to dim the candles. "I have never seen such a moon," I said, as I guided her among the whirling couples. "The night is wonderful." She looked up at me. "Let's go out in it, Jerry." Her voice was so low that I had to lean down to catch her words. I want to talk to you. I must talk to you." With burning cheek and beating heart, I followed her, catching up her cloak which lay on a chair. We made our way across the road and entered the forest. The carpet of pine needles was like a clean floor for Mimi's silver slippers. The air was so still that we seemed to float in a golden sea. "I told you," I said, "that it was wonderful." "Oh," Mimi said, "is anything wonderful?" She spoke hurriedly, sharply. I was aware of her agitation. "What is it?" I asked. "What has happened?" "Jerry," she said, and flung out her hands in a little gesture of despair. "I have promised to marry Andy, and I don't know why I did it." I stared at her, unbelieving. "No," I said. "No, you couldn't do such a thing. You don't love him." "I love what he does for me," she said, "and today when he gave me the brooch, I wanted it. Does that sound silly, Jerry? But I did, and I knew if I accepted it, that it would tie me to him. Yet I took it. I did a thing then that I wondered afterward I had dared to do. I bent over and took the brooch from her dress. She struggled, but I held her while I unfastened it. "Jerry," she said, "Jerry!" But I had it in my hand. "You are going to give it back to him." "Oh, do you think I shall let you sell yourself for a thing like that?" "Give it to me," she said in a strange little voice. I put both of my hands on her shoulders. "I will not until you promise. I shall keep it, and you can go back, and if he asks for it, you can tell him that he can come and get it." I was absolutely reckless. It seemed to me at the moment that if Andy would come and ask for the brooch, we could settle the thing there, as men had settled such affairs since they first fought for a woman. My father would never have done it as I did, but my Uncle Jerry would have done it. My defiance is a debt I owe to Uncle Jerry, for I am sure that it saved her, the recklessness of it and the feeling that I meant what I said. "But if I give it back," she temporized, "won't there be a next time and a next? I told you Andy was the apple on the tree, Jerry, and he's always hanging there waiting to be picked." The words seem light as I write them, but she was in dead earnest, and I heard myself saying, as if someone else were speaking, "There will not be a next time. Oh, Mimi, Mimi, if you would only let me show you what love can be." Her lips were parted. "What can it be, Jerry?" I told her in a rush of eloquence how we would go together to that far country, of the shining palace in which she should rule, of the dawns that would come up over the purple hills, of the nights under the stars. Well, I have said I was a poet, and I was carried on by my imagination, beyond myself, beyond realities, into that land of fancy in which I had lived since a child. And when I finished, I had her in my arms, under the moon, and she was saying, "Oh, would it be like that, Jerry?" And I was saying, "It would be more than that. I have no words to tell you all that it would be." 6. She made me no promise, except that she would give the brooch back to Andy. "I don't know what I shall say to him, but I'll do it." She could not, she told me, when the first flush of exultation had paused, think of marrying me. "We can't live on dreams, Jerry." I'll make them come true, I assured her stoutly. The next morning, Auntie Fala did not appear at breakfast, nor Mimi. I learned that she had a headache and sent her a scribbled note. She wrote back, I gave the brooch to him, and he is simply wild. I am keeping out of his way till he gets over it. As I could not see her, I mounted my horse and rode through the wood. When I reached the place where I had found her hat, I dismounted and went toward the clump of white birches where I had first seen her. I sat on the log where we had sat together. Not far away was the quiet pool with its amethystine shadows. Now and then a bird came down to drink, but there were few birds in the dark forest, and for the most part not a sound broke the stillness. Then, all at once, I heard the brittle crackle of the needles underfoot. I looked and saw a tall figure on the other side of the pool. It was Andy Fala. He did not see me, for I was hidden by the thick growth of birches. His face was dark, and he seemed as he stood there to cast a sinister shadow among those deeper shadows. He had something in his hand which sparkled, and he was looking down at it. Suddenly he lifted his arm and flung the shining thing into the pool. I guessed then what I learned afterward was the truth, that it was the peacock brooch, which disappeared with a gleam and a ripple into the watery depths. It is probably there now, to the wonderment of all the little fishes. I went back and found Mimi by the fire, and everybody else down for the late lunch. The mail had come, and a telegram. The telegram was from my father. My mother was, he said, very ill. They wanted me at once. End of chapter 3. From the novel Peacock Feathers by Temple Bailey.